spirit speaking, truth seeking, heart reaching, knowledge leaking, seeds sowing, harvest reaping, man of me. I have yet to leave, I'm still breathing. To quit, I have no reason. I mean, I'm asleep, but I be trying to live my dreams. I cannot even act if it's all easy. Either you gon' do it or you don't. Really, it ain't no in between. Baby, you can ask the sun, it's an everyday thing. Consistency in your routine is how you bring reality. Working like a slave, that's how I made this masterpiece. Living like a god, I lay at night, I rest in peace. They remember me, but I am not Haram or beef.
Peace, 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 peace. Peace and greetings. Happy Holy Friday. Welcome back again to another BBT book club. I'm your host tonight, Noble MOSSO L. And I thank all who've been tapping in to our book club every Friday. Again, we are the Burning Bush Tabernacle, Science Temple and School. And we are just a school of research, study, and we have a lot of books and topics that we study and source from. You know, I encourage you all to, reach out to us through email, through phone. My email is herbsofmayat@herbsofmayat.com, right here on the bottom ticker. You can email me directly. Check out a lot of the sites that we have. mypdfbooks.com, where you can get a plethora of topics, along with bindedbooks.com, which is our sister company. And we will physically bind the books and ship out to you for a fraction of the prices on Amazon and different sites. So, I definitely encourage everyone to just visit these sites that we have, see some of the items that we sell and offer. You want to read along with us and have some of these books for your library to build your library. Have it for your family, have it for your friends, have it for your children, and be able to dialogue from a place of wisdom, from a place of research and scholarship. This history and this study is not our opinion. It's not my opinion. This is researched information from scholars, educators, archaeologists, people who've dedicated their lives to the field of history, heritage, cultural preservation. And we are here at the Burning Bush Tabernacle and the BBT Book Club. We're just a think tank, and we welcome all men and women, no matter what your background, spiritual beliefs. Again, it's Holy Friday in Islam and Moorish science, and we are Sufis. So as a Sufi, we embrace and study all aspects of spirituality, not getting lost in one. So, we definitely want you to fellowship with us and reach out. Again, my email is herbsofmayat@herbsofmayat.com. Check us out. We got a lot of products. I have teas as well to go with your books. A lot of herbal blends. Good for the immune, good for this coming fall, just to be ahead of the curve health-wise. With no further ado, though, the book I want to touch on today, you can see right here, is called The Destruction of Black Civilization, Great Issues of a Race, from 4,500 BC to 200 AD. And this is a great book, a book that I studied in my college years and really helped me get a well-rounded understanding of world history. Of course we know, and if you don't know, before we were termed Black, Negro, and colored, we were many other nations, and we had other nationalities that we latched onto and created. And as we know, the Moorish Empire was vast. just as we study the Roman Empire and we know the British Empire, and these empires have touched every four corners of the earth. So it would only make sense that quote unquote Black civilizations would have done the same first, not because we're better. It's just when you're the mothers and fathers of civilization, your bloodlines should be on all four corners, no matter what the migration patterns happened. This is just a heritage trail, and it's picking up the breadcrumbs and picking up through understanding artifacts, ancient ruins, ancient things that have been found in the Americas before the slave time, before enslavement. So I really enjoy this book, and just want to brush on I'll go through the preface and go through the different chapters, but this is definitely a must-have book, and we offer through mypdfbooks.com. You can also reach out to me directly for this book, because I really encourage you to have it in your library if you're a scholar of history and understanding. This book, and some of the just reading some of these quotes about the book. John Henry Clark, president of the African Heritage Association, he said, the foundation and new approach to history of our race. It was pioneering research into unexplored areas. This book is not only urgently needed now, but it will be read by future generations. And I mean, being a historian and a lover of our ancestry, this was definitely a book that I studied, because, we all just want to have a complete understanding of history. A lot of our history has been marginalized and propagandized through film, through certain stories that weren't based off factual history. And me as a person, I've always wanted to just know the core, know the root of anything, whether it's health, whether it's the body, whether it's, where our people came from, when were our people great? When were our people not in bondage? When were our people on top in the civilization? When were we thriving? And that's one thing here at the Burning Bush Tabernacle and with the BBT, I've definitely learned to embrace and just step into understanding the history clearly. Not saying I'm know everything, and I'm always learning more and more details, but really trying to get a chronology of history. We're in the 21st century, but the 2000s, the 1900s, the 1800s, the 1700s, these were only hundreds of years ago. This wasn't that long ago. So to have a full, complete understanding of what was happening in these time periods from both perspectives, a lot of history sometimes we get from the conqueror's perspective. We get history from the person who colonized and won the wars and won the battles. They become the writers. I was watching a film in another book we have called Rome and Carthage, and it talked about Hannibal and the Carthaginian and the Punic Wars, and a lot of these histories of African generals and soldiers and conquerors and colonizers who were on top of their game and on top of the world during a time when Rome was weak, and Rome couldn't do anything with Hannibal, to be blunt. But when they did finally get to him through divide and conquer and studying his tactics, they made sure to write about him and the Carthaginian legacy through their eyes. And as we know, history can be, fabricated or exaggerated or swept under the rug per se, because they don't want the power of certain history to inspire. In my understanding, I feel like when you do understand certain history and embrace it and remove the hate and the anger, yeah, certain things happened and are very painful, very emotional, very traumatic, yet there are ways to real history to me is a therapy, because when you learn of the greater things that your ancestors did, when you learn of the battles that our ancestors won, when you learn that the Queen of Sheba was a real person, Queen Makeda, when you learn about Haile Selassie, Ethiopia, East Africa, the East African slave trade, so many dynamics was going on in the world. And I mean, just, you want to have a full, complete understanding of it. And I always wanted to, because I didn't want to misspeak. I didn't want to speak on something that I didn't have a complete understanding of. So this book is definitely a prerequisite, as we say. Excuse me. Let me get some tea. This book is definitely a prerequisite, and I welcome you all to reach out to me directly and get this book from me. Leave your email in the live chat if you would like any book or inquiries. If you're in the live chat, I'll even send you a free book. And if you just send a small donation for, whatever's on your heart, you'll get so many other books, because this book club is all about sharing the wealth, sharing the knowledge. Information isn't supposed to be, housed and hidden under your arm. You should, once you learn this information, it should inspire you to share it with people. But with no further ado, I will start The Destruction of Black Civilization, Great Issues of a Race, from 4500 BC to 200 AD. And this book was dedicated to the Black youth of the 1960s for beginning the Second Great Emancipation, the liberation of our minds, and thus changing the course of history. The preface. While this book is still a summary of more detailed research, it seemed necessary to amplify certain questions and the answers to them. The widespread interest in a study of the book is deeply appreciated and rewarding to the author. Excuse me. The letters from the prisons have been most touching and revealing. As noted elsewhere, I am keenly aware of many repetitions throughout the work, unavoidable because of comparative methods used, and others for emphasis, which may have turned out to seem overemphasized. And to go through the preface of this book, it has maps and illustrations. It begins with the origin and development of study, the origin and steps in the study, scope of the study, the white Arabs. And as we know, white is a political, social term. It's not It's a status. It's not always white as white skin or the white heritage. The European journey, the field studies, the theoretical framework, the scholars' war on the blacks, the new approach. Preconditions for progress, the conquest of the blacks by religion. And as we know, a lot of religions, since we've been on this planet as a people, have divided us and separated us more than united us. But, it's Holy Friday, and as Moorish Americans, we are uniting Asia, which means we are bringing everyone back together. We have more we have more commonalities than differences, and we won't use religion or any social dogma to divide us, because we all study. We all should want to educate ourselves more on others' religions. Any religious person would tell you the more you study other people's religions will give you a greater appreciation for your own. These are all just houses. There's a Christian house, there's a Islamic house, and there's a Judaic house. There's the esoteric of your spiritual system and religion, and then there's the exoteric, which is what you can see and is apparent, and then there's information that was hidden and held sacred. We don't say it's secret, it's just sacred information that certain groups and certain brotherhoods and sisterhoods valued and held close to them. The next chapter says the African Constitution, birth of democracy, the origin of African democracy, early education, the earliest judicial systems, the ancient African Constitution, the fundamental rights of African people. And I could say even, they always, in a lot of old school, a lot of teachings, we might have been mistaught that African people or indigenous people had no laws, were lawless people, were savages. But that's far from the truth. And there's evidence to support that. Chapter 7, the scattering of the people, routes to death and destruction, migrations as cultural decline, white scholars as authorities, the Saharan tragedy, ethnology and the migrations, the imperialist with the pen, to the caves, to the swamps. And that one right there that said the imperialist, with the pen, a lot of our history and the damage has been done with just the pen, with writings that have labeled our people for centuries. And a lot of us are here waking up and reclaiming our heritage and our nationality. It's, all cultures have been enslaved. The word slave comes from Slavic people. So I mean, when you study the etymology of words, when certain words were brought into daily use, a lot of words that we cling to right now were not even around a few hundred years ago. And if we really embrace that we were the original people, the mothers and fathers of civilization, we should understand that we have older and more appropriate terms for ourselves Chapter 8, the resurrection and the life, case studies by states. This one says they called it Ghana, but Ghana had many other names. Mali, Songhai. These are all great Black African Moorish civilizations. The Black revival of learning, the Black Muslim triumph and the end, the remarkable MOSSO. And I was always curious about this tribe, MOSSO, because that's almost how my last name is spelled, MOSSI. So I mean, there's so much that you can study once you're focused on certain topics and you can decode. I mean, this book and many other books we offer will just expand your paradigm, expand your conversations. Chapter 9 is Central Africa, evidence from a small state, the Kingdom of Cuba, the political organization, the government of Cuba, the religion of Cuba, history and philosophy, Shyam the Great, the King, General. And then I won't read through all these, but it has maps, Ethiopia, showing the King of Kings, the Arab settlements, the pyramids, early North Africa, Queen Hatshepsut, Queen Candace. I encourage all of us to study more of these two people, Queen Candace and Queen Hatshepsut. The King of Kush, the Queen of Ethiopia at Meroe, a decisive battle of history, empires of Mali and Songhai, Queen Nzinga of the Mataba, and Queen Nzinga of Angola. Part 1. What became of the Black people of Sumer? The traveler asked the old man, for ancient records show that the people of Sumer were Black. What happened to them? The old man sighed. They lost their history, so they died. A Sumer legend. It says, a traveler asked the old man for ancient records show that the people of Sumer were Black. And what happened to them? The old man sighed. They lost their history, so they died. So this is letting you know, if you neglect your history and your heritage and think it's not important and only look to the future, your cultural compass will be skewed because you didn't reach back. You didn't Sankofa. That's what Sankofa means, to reach back, to go forward. And just to touch on the preview of this book, this work is a summary of the 16 years of research and field studies, which were intended for a 2-volume history of African people. The writing plan for the 2 volumes would have required at least another 5 years, even if the serious impairment of my vision had not occurred. In the meantime, there had developed an urgent need for the result of my research, which concentrated on crucial areas in the history of the Blacks that had been either unknown, known, and misinterpreted, or known but deliberately ignored. My own history classes were only a part of the rebellion against the only kind of textbooks available. It was a general rebellion against the subtle message from even the most liberal white authors and their Negro disciplines. You belong to a race of nobodies. You have no worthwhile history to point to with pride. And this has been going on to this day. You know, the myth of us having no culture, the myth of us of having no civilization before enslavement. It's time to destroy that mentality and teach our children and teach our families the totality of our heritage and history. The destruction of Black civilization, therefore, could not wait another 5 years just to be more detailed, impressive, or massive in scope. For a reinterpretation of the history of the African race could be compressed into a small work for background reading. And so written that Black John Doe, cab driver or laborer, and Jane Doe, housemaid or waitress, as well as college students and professors, could read and understand the message from their forefathers and foremothers. So he's saying he made this book simple. You don't have to be college educated. You don't have to be a historian to understand these stories and these histories and this heritage trail. That Jackson laid forth, the author. And I'll read a little of the beginning. Origin and development of study. In a small town surrounded by cotton fields in South Carolina, a little Black boy in the 5th grade began to harass teachers, preachers, parents, and grandparents with questions which no one seemed able to answer. How is it that white folks have everything and we have nothing? Slavery. How and why did we become their slaves in the first place? White children go to a fine brick, stone, and marble school 9 months a year, while we go to a ramshackle old barn like building only 5.5 months, then to the cotton fields. Why? In the 6th grade, one of our teachers, Miss Alice Crossland, helped me to become a sales agent for the Crisis and the Norfolk Journal and Guide. This was like turning on the floodlights of heaven, for the books on our race listed on the back pages of the Crisis started me off on the never-ending search, raising more questions as I progressed through school, questions whose answers were even more perplexing. For having read everything about the African race that I could get my hands on, I knew, even before leaving high school, that one, the land of the Blacks was not only the cradle of civilization itself, but that the Blacks were once the leading people on earth. Two, that Egypt once was not only all Black, but the very same name Egypt was derived from the Blacks. 3, and the Blacks were the pioneers in the sciences, medicine, architecture, writing, and were the first builders in stone, etc. And that just makes me think about another author of book we offer, Ivan van Sertima, The Golden Age of the Moors, speaks on a lot of the science and technology that our ancestors introduced to civilization that we used up until this day. The big unanswered question, though, then was what had happened? How was this highly advanced Black civilization so completely destroyed that its people in our times and for some centuries past have found themselves not only behind the other peoples of the world, but as well the color of their skin a sign of inferiority, bad luck, and the badge of the slave, whether bond or free. And since I had learned that whites were once enslaved as generally as any other race, how did it come about that slavery was finally concentrated in Africa on Blacks only? So he questioned, because he learned that Europeans, white men and women, were in slavery, were in bondage. As I said earlier, the word Slavic. In short, no book or other studies in high school and college answered or gave clues to answers to the problems that puzzled me the most. For no matter what the factual data were, all the books written about Blacks by their conquerors reflected the conquerors' viewpoints. Nothing else should have been expected. And considering how thorough going was the capture of the minds of the Blacks, it is really not surprising that so many Negro scholars still faithfully follow in the footsteps of their white masters. These questions, along with those stated earlier, constituted the core problems for 16 years of study. And while the outcome did not eventuate in the more detailed work as planned, I think I succeeded in summarizing the most significant highlights of my findings in the chapters which follow this preview. Origin and steps in the study. 1. Review of world history. Believing that the history of the race could not be understood if studied in isolation, I began a slow and deliberately unrushed review of European history, ancient and modern, and the history of the Arabs and Islamic people. I say review because by 1950, I had already studied and taught in the 3 fields of American, European, and Arabic history, a most fortunate circumstance for the task ahead. And again, we offer other books that cross-reference, as he said, books about ancient and modern Britons, the original Arab. Arab meaning from the original word Arab, which means dark-skinned person. Two, he began the formal study of Africa in Europe. I did not know how very wise this was when the decision was made, for I did not then know that Europe and Asia had been hauling out of Africa over the centuries. Just about all of the historical materials I needed to see and study at the very outset. Certainly, I knew from reading all about the rape of Africa, but to know the scale on which this was done, one must see at least some of it in Europe with his own eyes and be amazed. The museums in the various cities of the European colonial powers are the repositories for much of African history. And as Sheikh always says, the Vatican, they have royal libraries, they have private areas that they have a lot of our artifacts. They have them in regular general museums as well. When you have a keen eye to find and research and do the research, you can see these things. These statues and these monuments, they have a lot of historical stories that will link you to them. Third are documentary sources. These are available in both Europe and America. Reports of colonial administrators in Africa, parliamentary debates, reports, and letters from geographers, explorers, captains of slave ships, and especially rewarding the reports and letters from missionaries to their respective societies, home offices. For the earliest record on the ancient African in Europe, Greek and Roman sources were the most useful. As I said earlier, the Greeks and Romans were at war and battle with the Carthaginians for centuries. The Punic Wars went on for, I want to say, I don't want to misquote, but they do say the Punic Wars went on for at least 50 years, if not more. So we were interacting and at war and at battle with a lot of people of European descent. And you don't know these bloodlines. There's a book by J.A. Rogers, Nature Knows No Color Lines. You never know the bloodlines of these people, even though they're in Europe, because the Mediterranean is the only thing that separates Africa from Europe and Asia. And there are islands within those waters. So people were always trading, traveling, intermingling. And fourth, he had field study. The field studies covered 2 years of work in Africa, armed with a solid background in written documentaries. The primary concern then turned to oral history and the developing methods of historical criticism applicable to it. Several chapters would be required just to detail the methods and procedures in this relatively new and rewarding field of oral tradition. Every region of Black Africa was covered. The 26 nations in East, West, Central, and South Africa, and the 105 language groups. And I can personally attest that, like you said, field study, when you actually go to Africa, when you go to the Caribbean, when you go to Central America, any indigenous lands, Europe, Asia, and you talk to the people, that at least I know in West Africa, I went to Senegal, Mauritania, and a lot of these brothers were of the Moorish, nomadic, Berber culture, and they always told me of stories of how their ancestors migrated from the east to the west. So if you look at a map and you see Egypt and Morocco, though it looks like a massive distance, was traveled by groups of men and women. That's why the word caravan was coined. Caravans were long processions of our ancestors who grouped together, nomadic. They had food, they had horses, they had camels, and they knew how to find different routes. They knew where the water wells were. So then when they would travel throughout the desert, and you think you're in the middle of nowhere, and then you see water, or you know where to find water and continue your journey to get to where you need to go. So as brother says, these are the origin and steps in study. 1, review of world history. 2, begin the formal study of Africa in Europe. And there's another great book about that we offer, Ivan Van Sertima. African presence in early Asia, the African presence in Europe. This is well documented if you're a scholar and you would like this wisdom. The destruction of Black civilization for the migrations help to answer the question, what happened to the African people? Or what caused them to descend from the highest place to the lowest among the people of the world? Even though the work was radically abridged and innovation in historical research was introduced by going beyond all questions of doubt, the principal viewpoints of the work, this was the case study method by which a representative number of states from every region of the continent was studied: North, East, West, Central, and Southern Africa. In the view from the bridge and in the final chapters, I make a more definite break from the old line of historians to be objective and more scientific. This school insists the research scholar should do no more than present the comprehensive and full documented results of his investigations. There should be no subjective commentaries, no editorializing. One should just present the factual data and leave interpretation and evaluation to the reader. This may not only be the correct viewpoint, but it is even beautiful for historians who represent the already arrived people who control the world. They can well afford the luxury of historical knowledge for knowledge's sake. The great satisfaction that comes from just knowing how things came to be. But the Black historian, member of a race under perpetual siege and fighting, an almost invisible war for survival, dare not follow in these footsteps of the master. Quite the contrary. After faithfully researching and piecing together the fragmented record of the race's history, the task of critical analysis and interpretation should begin. What were our strengths in the past? In what respects were we most vulnerable? Where did we go wrong? And all this, like the study of history itself, must be for the express purpose of determining what to do now. In short, the Black historian, if he is to serve his generation, must not hesitate to declare what he thinks the results of these studies mean. For even when our history shows us where we have been weak, it is also showing us how, through our own efforts, we can become strong again. So with that, this is a great book that I really want to offer you all. And I stress brothers and sisters to reach out and get this book from us. I'm going to stop there. It has a lot more, as you can see, to continue. I will touch on it more in a later date. Just wanted to make sure y'all saw the cover again. Again, drop your email in the chat if you would like a copy of this. If you would like to donate, you can donate to Cash App. Reach out, just reach out first and just let me know. Let me know what you're interested in, what books or what topics may spark your interest, because here at the BBT Book Club, we study all topics: history, spirituality, yoga, finances, Christianity, Islam, Judaism. I mean, you name it. We study it. We don't claim to know it all, but we have a vast library of books and topics that will help any student in their journey. And again, we are sponsored by a few companies. If you like any cultural regalia or cultural clothing, I invite you to go to moorishhaberdasher.com. If you are looking for any herbal teas to go with your books, we have a company, Mayat Sons, the Tea of Teas, divinely prepared. And these teas will cleanse you and help you heal and build your immune system before this winter comes. If you like any books, again, we have mypdfbooks.com. That's books with a Z, where reading funds the mental. If you would like any musical, our brother right here, Brian Hicks Bay, has a great tape, Transportation of Raw Materials. So check out BHB Music. And last but not least, we have Morsachi, a brand based on our ancestry and the Renaissance. And again, we have bindedbooks.com as well if you would like a physical copy of any book. And all these websites are fueled by ALO Design Pros. Design your online business strategy. And once again, I appreciate you all for tapping in. I'm Noble MOSSO L. Reach out to me. You can even text me or call me, 202-744-8440. Email me, text me. You definitely want to get your hands on some of these books and topics. And again, we are the Burning Bush Tabernacle. And I'll end by saying our prayer. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is our protector, our guide, and our salvation by night and by day through his holy prophet, Noorju Ali. Shalom Aleichem, Ayah Asher Ayah. Peace, peace, peace. Peace, love, and light.
I'm a spirit speaking, truth seeking, heart reaching, knowledge leaking, seed sowing, harvest reaping, man of meager meaning. I have yet to leave, I'm still breathing. To quit, I have no reason. I mean, I'm asleep.